Good evening. Good evening. This is part 2 of my reading of chapter 4 of Liber Secundus in the Red Book by Dr. C.G. Jung. And tonight I'm going to be reading some of the characteristics of the hermit or anchorite that Dr. Jung ran into in his active imagination. So I'll clean up my act on my clothing. Hi, Penelope, nice to see you. So this is going to be a very short reading. And then tomorrow I'll be reading the last part of this, which talks about why the church is essential for humanity. But first of all, I want to read this section. So remember yesterday in part 20, the first part of the Anchorite, was talking about the process of unlearning and how hard it is to unlearn anything. And so then Dr. Jung decided to describe the conditions of the anchorite. So that's what this will be. I'm on page 247 of the Red Book Reader's Edition. The solitary lives in endless desert, full of awesome beauty. He looks at the whole and at inner meaning. He loathes manifold diversity. He loathes manifold diversity if it is near him. He looks at it from afar in its totality. Consequently, silvery splendor and joy and beauty cloak diversity for him. What is near him must be simple and innocent, since close at hand the manifold and complicated tear and break through the silvery splendor. No cloudiness of the sky, no haze or mist is allowed to be around him. Otherwise, he cannot look at the distant manifold in the whole. Otherwise, he cannot look at the distant manifold in the whole. Consequently, the solitary loves the desert above all, where everything nearby is simple and nothing turbid or blurred lies between him and the far away. Now, the next 2 pages are entirely in italics. I won't mention that again, except I'll let you know when the italics stops. So the following part is all in italics. The life of the solitary would be cold were it not for the immense sun, which makes the air and rocks glow. The sun and its eternal splendor replace for the solitary his own life warmth. His heart longs for the sun. He wanders to the lands of the sun. He dreams of the flickering splendor of the sun, of the hot red stones spread out at midday, of the golden hot rays of dry sand. The solitary seeks the sun, and no one else is so ready to open his heart as he is. Therefore, he loves the desert above all, since he loves its deep stillness. He needs little food, since the sun and its glow nourish him. Consequently, the solitary loves the desert above all, since it is a mother to him, giving him food and invigorating warmth at regular hours. In the desert, the solitary is relieved of care and therefore turns his whole life to the sprouting garden of his soul, which can flourish only under a hot sun. In this garden, the delicious red fruit grows that bears swelling sweetness under a tight skin. You think that the solitary is poor. You do not see that he strolls under laden fruit trees, and that his hand touches grain 100-fold. Under dark leaves, the overfull reddish blossoms swell toward him from abundant buds, and the fruit almost bursts with thronging juices. Fragrant resins drip from his trees, and under his feet, thrusting seed breaks open. If the sun sinks into the plain of the sea like an exhausted bird, the solitary envelops himself and holds his breath. He does not move in his pure expectancy until the miracle of the renewal of light rises in the east. Brimful, delicious expectation, it is in the solitary. I'll read that again. Brimful, delicious expectation is in the solitary. The horror of the desert and of withered evaporation surround him, and you do not understand how the solitary can live. But his eye rests on the garden, and his ears listen to the source, and his hand touches velvet leaves and fruit, and his breath draws in sweet perfumes from blossom-rich trees. He cannot tell you, since the splendor of his garden is so abundant. He stammers when he speaks of it, and he appears to you to be poor in spirit and in life, but his hand does not know where it should reach in all this indescribable fullness. He gives you a small, insignificant fruit, which has just fallen at his feet. It appears worthless to you, but if you consider it, you will see that this fruit tastes like a sun which you could not have dreamt of. It gives off a perfume which confuses your senses and makes your dream of rose gardens and sweet wine and whispering palms. And you hold this one fruit in your hands, dreaming, and you would like the tree in which it grows, the garden in which this tree stands, and the sun which brought forth this garden. And you yourself want to be that solitary who strolls with the sun in his garden. His gaze resting on pendant flowers, and his hand brushing 100-fold of grain, and his breath drinking the perfume from 1,000 roses. Dull from the sun and drunk from fermenting wines, you lie down in ancient graves, whose walls resound with many voices and many colors of 1,000 solar years. When you grow, then you see everything living again as it was, and when you sleep, you rest like everything that was, and your dreams echo softly, again from distant temple chants. You sleep down through the 1,000 solar years, and you wake up through the 1,000 solar years, and your dreams full of ancient lore adorn the walls of your bedchamber. You also see yourself in the totality. That's the end of the italic. Now in the next section, the word summa means whole, and Dr. Jung often speaks of wholeness, so you can think of summa as representing wholeness. Kersha says, okay, Kersha, I will give you one free advertisement, but the chat on my site is not intended for you to advertise your site, just so you know. You sit and lean against the wall and look at the beautiful, riddlesome totality. The Summa lies before you like a book, and an unspeakable greed seizes you to devour it. Consequently, you lean back and stiffen and sit for a long time. You are completely incapable of grasping it. Here and there, a light flickers. Here and there, a fruit falls from high trees, which you can grasp. Here and there, your foot strikes gold. But what is it if you compare it with the totality, which lies spread out tangibly close to you? You stretch out your hand, but it remains hanging in invisible webs. You want to see it. You want to see it exactly as it is, but something cloudy and opaque pushes itself exactly in between. You would like to tear a piece out of it. It is smooth and impenetrable like polished steel. So you sink back against the wall, and when you have crawled through all the glowing hot crucibles of the hell of doubt, you sit once more and lean back and look at the wonder of the Summa that lies spread out before you. Here and there a light flickers, here and there a fruit falls. For you it is all too little, but you begin to be satisfied with yourself, and you pay no attention to the years passing away. What are years? What is hurrying time to him that sits under a tree? Your time passes like a breath of air, and you wait for the next light and the next fruit. So that's what I intended to read for this evening. And that was kind of a description of what an anchorite is. It's a pretty feckless role in life. But in any case, and that's my interpretation, not anybody else's. So tomorrow, I'm going to read the next section of this, the last section of this particular chapter on the Anchorite, and I will be calling this next section, Why Humanity Needed and Needs Religion. So I'll give you that tomorrow, and that will be in part 22 of my reading of the Red Book. And so, well, Kershaw, I'm not very often on Instagram, but I will look into it. And so, Penelope, thank you very much for being here tonight. And I will see you again soon. Deb is anxious for me to join her for an evening of television. We've been watching The Messiah, and we've watched the first 7 episodes. It's quite an engaging program. So if you have access to it on Netflix, I urge you to take a look at it. It's called Messiah. And anyway, so thank you, Kershaw, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.